Hola, ¿cómo están, my compañeros? Right here is an article that was written in 2008. So it was a little bit before they really started to put up the blinders, before they started to really deceive us about the connection between Huawei and the Chinese People's Liberation Army. Please allow for me to read this article, and please try to pay close attention to the true threat that it is slowly working its way into our country. I'm even kind of worried that Cisco Systems, which is the counter to Huawei here in the United States, I would hate to think that there are executive level individuals in Cisco as well as Huawei that are part of a fraternal organization. And if that's the case, then that's absolutely disheartening. Regardless, let me read this. Cisco versus Chinese military partner, Huawei Technology. Santa Monica, California-based research powerhouse RAND Corporation prepared an interesting 332-page report for the United States Air Force titled A New Direction for China's Defense Industry. RAND made the following 4 points about Cisco's competitor, Huawei Technologies. Before I read the first point, I just want to point out the left. They play the left versus the right. They're both they are in competition, but they're both partners, and we are the ones that lose every time. They either the left wins or the right wins. They win. They're in cahoots. But the people, we lose every time. Every time. Point 1. Private Chinese companies such as Huawei, by contrast, represent the new digital triangle model whereby the military and other state actors and their numbered research institutes help fund and staff commercially oriented firms that are designated national champions, receive lines of credit from state banks, supplement their R&D research funding with directed 863 money, and actively seek to build global market share. The military, for its part, benefits as a favored customer and research partner. It was interesting at the beginning of this, they said by contrast. They don't want us to believe that Cisco Systems is this same sort of triangular model. But it's obvious to see that Cisco Systems, or that the model here for the United States, is one where they use federal money to come up with research and development inventions, and then they funnel that tech to private companies so they can make money. And then they return the money to the R&D. And the R&D, to include the researchers, the professors, it's just a money machine. They just take the federal money and they use it to do whatever they would like to do with, like studying doves on cocaine or shrimp on a treadmill. Or instead of studying autism, they studied whether or not Neil Armstrong said, for one small step for man or one small step for a man. They didn't want to study $58 million worth of autism and discover its true source. There's a real shady system, real shady goings-ons with the research and development and the ability for federal research and development to be turned into private profit. All federal research and development needs to stay in the U.S. Treasury coffers. Perhaps they would not even have to tax us anymore if we could sell the stuff that our money has invented. Perhaps they would be able to cut down taxes. Who would have thunk it? Regardless, let me get back to point 2. I just want to ask you to keep in mind that all of these points that they're making, they have one finger pointed at Huawei, but they have 3 fingers pointed back here at Cisco and the RAND Corporation. So here we go. Point number 2. In analyzing the dynamics of the IT sector, it is first necessary to divide the defense portion of the IT sector into 2 related but distinct categories. The first includes those subsectors providing the PLA, People's Liberation Army, with commercial, off-the-shelf IT systems such as routers, switches, and computers, which have become increasingly central to the digitization of the U.S. military. Key companies in this category include such red chips, which is, instead of a blue chip company, they say red chip in China. That's red versus blue, left versus right. They try to just cause chaos so they can make money off of us. It sickens my heart. red chips as Huawei, Zhongxing, Datong, Zhuang, and the Get It, and the Wuhan Research Institute. This article was written in 2008, and they're speaking about the Wuhan Research Institute. All of which are private companies spun off from state research institutes that enjoy the national champion preference within the system. They are marked by new facilities in a dynamic locale such as southern and eastern China, a high-tech workforce, and infusion of foreign technology. These firms are not obligated to provide a social safety net for thousands of unemployable workers and their families in rural areas. Instead, they hire and fire staff using market-based incentives and stock options. So it sounds as if they're utilizing a capitalist system for their own benefit, yet they're still subjugating these 600,000 quote-unquote peasants, which is disgusting. It's absolutely atrocious. We need selflessness. We need less selfishness and more selflessness. Point number 3. The two most important categories of the Chinese IT firms, IT standing for information technology, Chinese IT firms, particularly in dealing with foreign multinationals, are telecommunications equipment and electronics. So the main two parts of IT, electronics and telecommunications equipment. Publicly, the major players in telecommunications, Huawei, Datong, Zhongxing, and Great Dragon, Zhuang, appear to be independent private sector actors. By contrast, many of the electronics firms are grouped under ostensibly commercially oriented conglomerates such as China Electric Corporation. However, one does not need to dig too deeply to discover that many of these electronic companies are the public face for, sprang from, or are significantly engaged in joint research with the state research institutes under the Ministry of Information Industry, Defense Industrial Corporations, or the military, aka the People's Liberation Army. Please understand about the People's Liberation Army. It is not the army of China. It is the army for the Chinese Communist Party. It would be likened to if the Democrat Party had absolute control over the United States military, and it was called the Democrat United States military. So please keep in mind, when they talk about the PLA, they aren't talking about a force that protects the homeland of China and all of its people, regardless of race, color, or creed. They're talking about a force of thugs, upwards of 2 million, that are dedicated to a communist ideology and to protect communist ideology and not China. China has 5,000 years of beautiful, beautiful, wondrously dynamic history. There used to be somebody's job to question the emperor. There was always this sort of back and forth between leadership and subordinate, always. But now, over the last 75 years, China has been rotting from the inside out. Let me continue. Indeed, each of the 4 triggers of the Chinese telecommunications equipment market, Huawei, Zhongxing, Datong, and Zhuang, originated from a different part of the existing state telecommunications research and development infrastructure, often from the internal telecommunications apparatus of different ministries or the military. These connections provide channels for personal transfers, commercialization of state-sponsored R&D spin-offs, and militarization of commercial R&D spin-offs. That's exactly what they do here in the United States with Boston Dynamic or some of the other companies that come up with this super high-tech information. They pump it, it gets pumped from the defense to the private R&D, make money, then to the defense, private R&D, make money, and they pump it between the R&D, the federal R&D, and then an elitist class of researchers. They believe themselves to be superior, and there's a, as they call it, a conglomerate of maybe a confederacy, a conspiracy, where the red and the blue pretend to fight each other. They pretend to go at each other, and they laugh at us behind closed doors. Point number 4. Not listed. I'm going to go ahead and include the entire, or the link to the 332-page RAND report. Since Huawei is a major global competitor of Cisco, how do you feel about its tight partnership with the Chinese military? This article was written in 2008, and I think that if we can look at the trend of what has occurred from 2008 up until now, as you do in the healthcare field, you know, blood pressure is high, it's high, oh, it's low, high, low, low, high. Okay, he has high blood pressure. Well, look at the trend over the last 12 years, 12, 14 years. And I can tell you that the Chinese, from my personal opinion, I believe that, especially how they mentioned the Wuhan Institute of Virology in a 2008 article pertaining to some sort of work between the PLA and its R&D, private R&D firms. The fact that they mentioned the Wuhan Institute of Virology and they mentioned it 14 years ago in the same capacity that we are mentioning it today indicates to me that we are right on the money. We do not need to be told what is in front of us. We are able to discern the facts. We are able to see. We are able to assess. Assumptions make an ass out of you and me, but still, one must assume at some point, you must pull the trigger and you must say, this is what I believe. And you know what I believe? I believe that the red and blue divide in the United States is an artificial divide. It's artificial at the very top. With Josh Hawley or Matt Gaetz, all of these Republican heroes, they're not. They pull back right at the end. They pull back. The one hero and the one individual I think that is actually fighting for the American people is Marjorie Taylor Greene. I believe her to be fighting for us, and the reason why is because they're trying to pass legislation to kick her out of Congress. So obviously she's doing a little bit of she's making some trouble. She's doing good. She's doing what she needs to be doing. She's doing what I would be doing. She's getting it done. She's trying to demand that each and every vote, that every single member of Congress must say yay or nay to every single vote. I thought that was already the case, but apparently they don't have to vote on every single vote. That's absurd. What do we pay them for? We pay them to vote. We pay them to display their opinions. Regardless, I will include the links.